Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a source that paints a seriously dramatic picture of our atmosphere. And I mean, we are starting with the highest stakes possible here, human survival. Today, we're unpacking a fascinating text titled The Ozone Layer, Divine Guardian of Earthly Life. It takes us on this incredible journey from the outer edges of our stratosphere all the way down to the very air we breathe, presenting a highly unique perspective on the incredibly fragile systems keeping everything on this planet alive. So let's just dive right in. I want you to imagine a world without that sky blue, transparent sphere sitting about 20 to 30 kilometers above our heads. We all go about our daily lives, right? We rarely stop and look up at the sky and think of it as an actual physical barrier. But this source forces us to stop and ask, what exactly is standing between us and the absolute, harsh, unforgiving void of deep space? Well, it turns out there's this invisible, or actually faintly light blue force working completely around the clock to make sure our planet stays habitable. To really grasp just how critical this layer is, the text outlines some absolutely staggering stakes. Just think about this for a second. If this stratospheric shield just suddenly vanished, cosmic rays, and specifically those intense ultraviolet rays from the sun, would beam directly down on us, no resistance whatsoever. And according to the source, the results would be catastrophic. We are talking about a horrifying 99% cancer rate in humans and animals and a 99% cataract rate. Just mind-blowing numbers. But the sheer devastation wouldn't stop there. From withered crops to vulnerable pets, there'd be this massive cascading effect across all biological life. Plus, our immune systems, they would become so compromised that we literally wouldn't be able to fight off everyday bugs. The source points out that a simple, contagious disease, like, the common flu, could wipe out entire populations. So the absolute necessity of this barrier, yeah, it really can't be overstated. Okay, so what exactly is this ultimate protector? Well, the source explains this life-saving shield is made of ozone. It was actually first discovered by a German scientist way back in 1839. Structurally speaking, it's a relatively unstable, light blue molecule made up of 3 oxygen atoms. It's mostly created through this process called photolysis. Basically, intense ultraviolet radiation smashes into normal oxygen molecules, breaks them apart, and forces them to recombine into this special 3-atom protective structure. It's kind of like a microscopic recycling program up in the sky. Now, what's truly staggering to me is the sheer concentration of this gas in one very specific place. Even though ozone makes up less than 100,000th of the total atmosphere, we are talking about a tiny microscopic fraction here. 90% of it is perfectly concentrated exactly where we need it, right up there in the ozone layer. This hyper-specific placement is exactly what makes it so incredibly effective at shielding the Earth. Once it's up there in the stratosphere, it acts as this incredibly precise filter. The source details how the ozone layer specifically absorbs and blocks ultraviolet radiation waves ranging right between 240 and 320 nanometers in wavelength. And you might be wondering, why did those specific numbers matter? Well, because that exact range of UV radiation is perfectly readily absorbable by the nucleic acid in our biological cells. If those specific wavelengths actually made it down to the surface, they're exactly what would cause the severe diseases and biological breakdown we just talked about. But here is where the source highlights a fascinating Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde paradox with this exact same molecule. While stratospheric ozone protects all earthly life and is an absolute must-have for our survival, ground-level ozone, that is actually a highly harmful substance. It's the exact same chemical makeup, just 3 oxygen atoms, but its location completely flips its relationship to living things. Up high, it's a vital shield. Down low, it's a major hazard. Down near the surface, right where we breathe, this powerful photochemical oxidant just wreaks havoc. It actively damages the lung tissues of animals and severely messes with plant photosynthesis systems. It's actually so reactive that it even degrades physical materials like rubber and plastics. To make matters worse, it reacts with the hydrocarbon in car exhaust and volatile gasoline to generate these dangerous organic pollutants like acetaldehyde and ketone. So yeah, definitely not something you want hanging around at ground level. Let's shift gears and look at the timeline of how this crisis unfolded, because it really reveals a crazy near miss for humanity. For over a century after it was discovered in 1839, the ozone layer just quietly did its job. But by the late 20th century, human activities started to drastically mess with this delicate balance. This eventually forced massive international responses like the 1985 Vienna Conference and the 1990 London Conference, where world leaders and scientists had to urgently get together to pass resolutions to protect this vital layer. So, the crucial turning point that triggered all those global panic alarms, that happened in 1973. This was when two scientists from the University of California discovered that synthetic substances known as CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, were actively depleting and just destroying this vital stratospheric shield. Without even realizing it, humanity had created a chemical that was floating all the way up into the atmosphere and dismantling our planet's main defense system from the inside out. At the exact same time, the source points out this sort of double whammy effect. While those CFCs were destroying the good ozone up high, our activities in the refrigeration and aviation industries were contributing to harmful ozone generation way down in the troposphere, closer to the surface. The author notes that these simultaneous human activities were basically pushing humanity right to the brink of extinction, which, absolutely explains why scientists and forward-thinking political leaders became so intensely concerned. But hold on, because beyond just blocking UV radiation, the source introduces a truly astonishing, much lesser-known function of the ozone layer. It actually acts as a physical planetary shield against space debris. We almost always just think of ozone as this invisible radiation filter, right? Well, the text asserts that the ozone layer also plays a massive physical role in protecting the Earth's surface from a constant daily bombardment by objects from deep space. According to the text, the ozone layer actively collides with incoming meteorites, creating this intense friction that burns and digests them right up there in the atmosphere. The author makes a really fascinating claim here. They state that without this protection, our Earth would just be littered with meteorites every single day. And over time, this constant piling up of space rock would cause the Earth to gain so much weight that our planetary orbit would literally fail, and we would have plunged straight into the sun a long time ago. So taking all this in, looking at this incredibly delicate, multifunctional shield, a barrier that perfectly blocks specific UV wavelengths to protect our DNA while also burning up meteorites to maintain our entire planetary orbit, the author stops to ask a pretty profound question. How exactly did such a flawlessly calibrated system come to be? At this point, the source concludes with a very distinct theological viewpoint. After laying out all the scientific mechanics of ozone, the UV spectrum, and planetary defense, the author argues that this perfect balance is just too precise to be some random natural accident. The text states directly that the ozone layer has not formed naturally, but rather it's an indispensable system that has been carefully designed and arranged by the greatest creator. Ultimately, the author is using the intricate science of the ozone layer as direct evidence of divine intervention. Now, regardless of your personal worldview, I think this explainer leaves us with a genuinely profound final thought about the incredibly specific, super fragile conditions required for our survival. We live on a planet protected by a microscopic fraction of gas, perfectly suspended in the stratosphere, blocking the exact wavelengths of light that would destroy our DNA. It really forces us to look up at the sky and wonder, when you consider all these intricate, invisible systems working flawlessly together just to keep you alive, what do you see?